So if you're on Zoom, you also need to have those base 5 blocks out. You're going to get lost. Now, let me kind of show everybody this first. This is what you're going to be teaching. All right? When you start teaching, you're going to be teaching base 10. All right? So these little bitty cubes, right? They're tiny little cubes. These are in for ones. So when you get 10 of these little cubes, you're going to end up trading those for a rod. Now, a rod is literally 10 of those little cubes, what? Glued together. So do you understand that these are your 10s? Okay? So let me see if we can go better. Okay. Now, when you get 10 10s, what do those get traded for? Those get traded for what? 100. So they're literally 10 of these rods glued together to make these. These are called a flat. When you get 10 hundreds, that goes together to make 1,000. So these are the manipulatives that you're going to be using when you're teaching elementary school. These are base 10 blocks. So you have ones, you have 10s, you have hundreds, and you have thousands. So when you tell somebody to make the number 14, you're telling them, now what base is this? This is base what? 10, isn't it? So this is my 10 to the 0, which is the same thing as 1. This is 10 to 1, which is 10. So you're telling them they need 4 what? Ones. And they need 1 what? 10. So you expect them to get 4 of these little cubes, these little ones. All right, so you got 4 of these, and then you expect them to get 1 of these. So on their desks, they have 1 10. Is everybody with me? And 4 of those ones, and that makes a 14. All right. When they want to make a 231, these are base 10. So 10 to the 0, 10 to the 1, 10 to the 2. So this is my ones. These are my 10s. What does 10 to the 2 mean? Your hundreds. So how would you expect your little first grader to represent 231 with these manipulatives? How many little units are they going to need? 1. All right. How many rods would you expect them to have? 3. Okay. So they have 3 of these. All right. And then how many of these flats would you expect them to have? 2. All right. So now, if they want to do 231, they only need 1 of those. They're going to need 3 of these rods. And then they're going to need what? 2 of these big flats. Is everybody with me? Now, do you see that there are, when you get 10 of these, you get 1 of these? When you get 10 of these, you get what? 1 of those. So how many little units are in this? How many ones are in this one? 100. Now, how many hundreds are in this? How many flats do you stack up to make this? 10. So do you understand that when you're in base 10, the trade is always 10 of something for 1 of something? When you get 10 ones, you trade it for 1 10. When you get 10 tens, you trade it for what? 100. When you get 10 hundreds, you're going to trade it for what? 1,000. So when you're teaching kindergarten and the child makes a 12, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to get 12 little cubes out. And that's 12. But that's not the way we represent 12. We don't do 12 ones. What do? We expect the child to group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, what? 8, 9, what? 10. We expect the kid to know to group these and make one of these. So we expect the kid to trade and give away 10 things and receive one thing, which when you're 5, that's freaky. I'm giving you 10 things and you're giving me what? One thing. So they don't understand why that's a fair trade. So you're going to have a really hard time convincing them that 12 of these things is the same as 3 of something. Because they're going to trade it for one of these and then still have what? 2 of those. Now, for you, it seems simple. So we're going to put you in their world for a second. All right, I need you to get your base 5 blocks out. All right, and put them on your desk. So the first thing I need you to do is kind of let me see them because that's your homework check for today. All right. Katie, there's yours. That's yours, Lauren. That's yours, Katie. Eddie's got hers. And if you got yours, they did deal. All right. And you got yours. Meredith, you got yours. All right, Ariana, you got yours out. Abby. All right, Annie. All right, Natalie. Sierra, you don't have yours? Okay. Well, it's gonna be hard. Okay, now. All right. So what we're gonna do is this. We're not gonna do base 10. What are we gonna be doing? Base what? 5. So every time in base 10, your trade's always 1 of something for what? 10 of something. But in base 5, what's your trade gonna be? Not 10 for 1, but what? 5 for 1. Now, what do you think about this? If I told you to write down all the face values that you were going to have in base 10, what are all the face values that you have in base 10? Tell me what they are. Because I'm going to ask you to do that on your first test. List all the face values in base 10. What are you going to write down? A 1. What else can you write down? 2. What else can you write down? 3. What else? 4.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Now, is there any other face value in base 10? Is there any other picture that you have? Well, how do you write the number 105? In base 10, there are 10 pictures. So in base 5, they're going to be what? 5 pictures. If you're in base 8, you have how many pictures? 8. If you're in base 2, you have how many pictures? 2. So your base tells you how many face values there are. If you were in base 12, which is a real thing, you'd have 12 pictures. Okay. Now, what's the biggest face value that you can have in base 10? Which face value up there is the biggest? What number? 9. So what's the biggest face value going to be in base 5? 4. If you're in base 5, these are the only face values that you can have. You can't have a 6. You can't have a 9. Those are not allowed. Now, later, we're going to do like base, say, 8. What face values can you have in base 8? 0 all the way up to what? 7. What if you're in base 2? Because we're going to do base 2. What's the only base values you have in base 2? 0 and what? 1. That's it. Now, so here's what I need you to do. I need you to think about the base 10 for a minute. If I told you to make a 13 in base 10, now, there's no base showing. So when there's no base showing, it's understood to be base 10. Just like when there's no decimal showing, you know where the decimal really is?
0.
Where's the decimal when there's not one showing? It's at the far right. There's no index number showing. Is that square root, cube root, fifth root? What is that? Square root. The most common things we don't show. So when there's not a base showing, it's understood to be what base? 10. How would I make a 13 with these base 10 blocks? How many of these little cubes would I have? 3. All right. How many of these rods would I have? I'd have how many? 1. So you'd have 3 units and you would have 1 rod. Now your units are your ones. In base 10, do you understand your rods are your tens? Correct? Well, here's what you're going to make. You're going to make a 1, 3 in base 5 with your blocks. So what does that mean? It means the same thing it means over here. Now, if this is base 5, these bases are literally 5s. So instead of this being the 10 to the 0 column, this is the what? 5 to the 0 column. So instead of this being the 10 to the first, this is the what? 5 to the what? First column. Now, these are still your units, and these are still your rods. So take your manipulatives. How many little units? Your little squares. Everybody with me? How many little squares do you need? 3, don't you? All right. How many rods do you need?
2.
How many rods do I need right here? How many?
2.
Why are we saying 2? Did I need 2 rods over here? I needed what? The face value tells you how many, and the place value tells you what. See, you're already confused as a 5-year-old. This says I need 1 rod and what? 3 what? Units. So what do you need? You need 1 what? Rod and 3 what? Units. So that's what I need you to pull out. 1 rod and what? 3 units. It's what you do when technology's not your friend. It's not working well today. All right, so there's 1 rod. That's 1, 3 in base 5. 1 rod and what? 3 units. Just like over here, I would have 3 units and 1 rod. What's the difference? The length of the what? Of the rod. Now, what base 10 number is 1, 3 in base 5 the same thing as? 8. Because you have 1, 5. This is not my my tens column. What column is this? This is my fives column. So I have 1, 5, and this is my ones column, and I have 3 what? Ones. So 1, 3 in base 5 is the same thing as 8 in base what? 10. Now, make this one with your base 10, with your base 5. All right. I want you to make a 3, 2 in base 5. All right, so take your base 5 blocks and make a 3, 2 in base 5. All right, how do I make a 3, 2 in base 5? What do I need now? How many rods do I need this time? I need 3 rods. How many units do I need? Oops. All right, so I need how many? 2? That's how you make a, now it's not pronounced 32 because there are not any 30s in base 5. That's in base 10. That's 3 5s and 2 what? 1s. So what base 10 number is this? 17. Because I have 3 5s plus I have 2 what? 1s. So you do this for me. You make a 4, 4 in base 5 on your desks, and then change that to a base 10 number. All right, how many rods did you put up there on your desk? 4. All right. How many little units did you have? 4. All right, is everybody okay on making it? Now, what base 10 number is that? 24. Now, if you don't put a base, what's it understood to be? Base what? Base 10. All right, try this one for me. 1, 0, 3 in base 5. Make me a 1, 0, 3 in base 5. So does everybody understand? This is still my ones, right? So this is still my units. That's my 5s. So that's my rods. What column is this? My what? Is it my 10s? What's 5 to the second? That's my 25s column. In other words, that's a flat. Because remember, it takes 5 of these to make one of these and 5 of these to make what? One of those. So now I'm going to need one of my flats. So I'm going to need one flat. How many rods am I going to need? None. How many little units am I going to need? 3. Is that what's on your desk? That's a 1, 0, 3 in base 5. Now, what base 10 number is it?
28.
28. Why? This is 1 what? 25. So I got 125, plus I've got no 5s. Everybody with me? Plus I've got 3 what? 1s, don't I? So 25, 125 plus 3 1s is 28. So that number in base 10 is 28. Now, I told you to make one of these. Okay? What is this? What column is this one going to be? You tell me. How many's in there? This is your 125s column. Because you have a 5 to the 0, a 5 to the first, a 5 to the second. What's the next column going to have to be? 5 to the third. This would tell you how many 125s you have. Now, I'm going to put 3 numbers up here and let you play with them for a second. All right, and then we're going to talk about how to generalize it, and we're going to talk about how to kind of go the other way. All right. I want you to make the number, and then I want you to tell me with your box, and then figure out what base 10 number it is and write it down. Is everybody with me? So I want you to make a 4, 1 in base 5, and then tell me what that is in base 10. Got a marker that writes a little better. And then I want you to make me a 3, 3 in base 5. And then I want you to make me a 2, 2, 4 in base 5. So make it and then change it to a base 10 number. And see if you can figure out, what if I took the blocks away from you, how would you figure out the answer? So while you're doing it, see if you can find a pattern to it. Okay, so here you can just like draw it. Does that make sense? Good deal. Now, look at what you got. All right, you had to make a 4-1 in base 5. 4-1 in base 5. So does everybody understand that this one is your units and this one is your rods? So if you're in base 5, this is your 5 to the 0 and your 5 to the first. Is everybody with me? So do you understand that you have 4 5s and you have 1 1? So if you have 4 5s and 1 1, what base 10 number was that? 21. Is everybody okay? Now look at this one. You had 3 3 in base 5. So you had 3 rods, 3 5s, plus you had what? 3 what? 1. So what base 10 number was that? What was it? 18. Now down here you had 2 25s, plus you had 2 what? 5s, plus you had 4 what? 1s. So what number in base 10 was this? 60 what? 4. All right, now. So suppose you didn't have the blocks. Suppose I gave you a 1 0 2 3 in base 5 and asked you what base 10 number was that? What can you do that you were really doing? How are you getting these numbers? What did you do? You had 2 what? 25s. You had 2 25s, and then you had 2 what? 5s, and then you had 4 what? 1s. So you figured out how much this was, and how much this was, and how much this was, and what did you do with those answers? Did you add them up? Because 2 25s was 50, 2 5s was a 10, and 4 1s is a 4. And when you added 50 to 10 to 4 is where you got the 60 what? The 64. So let's make sure we understand. So do you understand that if you're in base 5, these bases really are what? 5. Because in a minute they're going to be base 2 and base 6. What's this power always start with on the far right? 0. Now, what is 5 to the 0 the same thing as? 1. What's 5 to the first the same thing as? 5. What's 5 to the second the same thing as? 25. Is that being 5 times 5? What's 5 to the third going to be? Well, what's 5 times 5? 25. So what's 25 times another 5 going to give me? So I would have 1 of these. I would have none of those. I would have 2 of these. And I would have 3 of what? Of those. So how would I figure out what number that would be? I have 1 what? I have 1 125. Plus I have what? No what? 25s. Plus I have what? 2 5s. Plus I have what? 3 what? 1s. Well, if you have 125, that's just 125, right? You didn't have any rod, you didn't have any of those flat, so that's nothing. You had 2 5s, 2 of the rods made another what? 10. And then you would have 3 1s. So what number is that in base 10? 100 what? 38. So what number would this one be? Try it without the blocks for a second. What's 404 in base 5? Now, if I didn't have the blocks, what's the first thing I should probably do to those place values? When you want to label them? So what place value is the one on the far right? 5 to the what? 0. What's this one? 5 to the what? 1. And what's that one? 5 to the what? 2. So the first thing you did was you labeled the place value. What should I do next? What did I do over here? What do we call this? That we went over at the beginning of class off that homework. Expanded form. So I'm going to write that number in expanded form. Now, what is expanded form? Isn't expanded form the sum of the products of the face values and the what? Place value. So I'm going to have 4 of these 5 to the seconds. Plus, I'm going to have none of the 5s to the first. Plus, I've got 4 of these 5 to the zeros. So expanded form does not just for base 10, it's for any base. And then you simply finish the calculation. Now, most of us don't think very well in powers. Remember, we have to do parentheses first. On inside this parenthesis, I've got multiplication and exponents. And order of operation says which one comes first, multiplication or exponents? Exponents. So what is 5 to the second? Is that 10? 25. What's 5 to the first? That's just 5. Now be careful. 5 to the 0 is not 0. What's 5 to the 0? 1. What is 4 25s? How much would that already be? Would that already be 100? No 5s. How many is 4 1s? Isn't that a 4? So what number is that? It's 100 what? 4 in base 10. So I gave you a number that wasn't in base 10. What if I gave you a number in base 3? Now, if I'm doing base 3, what are the only face values that I'm allowed? 1 and 2, and don't forget what? And 0. Now, if you're in base 3, these are still your units, right? Now, these are your rods, but how long are your rods now? Are they 10 long or 5 long? What are they? They'd be what? 3 long. So I would have 2 of these little cubes. I would have 2 rods, but how many are in the rods? 3. Now, wouldn't this be my flats? But how big would my flats be? Wouldn't they be 3 of these rods? So how many would be in a flat? None. Everybody with me? Now, here I wouldn't have any of them though. Do you understand? I mean, but how big would the cube be? It'd be 3 of these flats, wouldn't it? Now, that's kind of what this is. You can't do 3-dimensional with paper. Is everybody with me? So for one of those big cubes, it'd be like you had 3 of these jammed up next to each other. Everybody with me? So do you understand if I'm in base 3, the bases really are 3s? What's this first power over here? 0. What's that one? 1, 2, 3. So this is still my 1s column. What's that? That's my 3s column. What column is this? It's not your 1,000, it's your 9s column. What column is this one? What's 3 to the 3rd? That's my 27s column. So I have 127. I don't have any what? 9s. I have 2 what? 3s, and I have 2 what? 1s. So I labeled my place values. Now when I write it in expanded form, I write down what I just said. So I labeled my columns and I wrote it in expanded form. And then I finished the calculation. Well, 3 to the third is 27, so I have 127. I don't have any 9s. I have 2 3s, and then I have 2 1s. So if I have 127, that's just 27. I don't have any 9s, so that doesn't add anything to it. If I have 2 3s, how many is that? 6. And if I have 2 1s, that's another what? 2. So what base 10 number would that be? 30 what? 35. Now, what if I was in base 2? What are the only face values that I can have in base 2? 0 and 1. See if you can figure out what base 10 number that is. Okay. I'm just going to write back what I had here a little bit better. Now, if I'm in base 2, what are the bases? They really are what? 2s. What's this power start with on the far right? 0. Then it goes up whole numbers, right? So that's what I mean by label the place values. Then step 2 is you write it in expanded form. So in expanded form, you say the face value times the place value. Plus, you have the next face value times the place value. Plus, and you do that all the way done. So does everybody understand what I mean by step 2 when I say write it in expanded form? And then your last thing is you finish your calculation. Now, do you do exponents first or multiplication? Exponents. So what column is that 1 in? That's in my what? 8's column. That 0 is in my what? 4's column. And that 1, that first one's in my 2's column. And then what's that last one in my 1's column? So the first thing in the parenthesis is your face value, and the second thing is your place value. So you've got 1/8, so that's 8. 0 times anything is 0. 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. So what base 10 number is that? 11. So we got to go this way. So you got to be able to go from any other base to base 10. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, as weird as that feels to you, is what it feels like when you're 5 or 6 or 7 and somebody pulls out these base 10 bars. It makes perfect sense to you, but it does not make perfect sense to them. Now, to be honest with you, you use this base every day more than you use base 10. Your world would probably cease to exist, my guess is, without base 2. What uses base 2? Do you know what uses base 2? Cell phone, computers, uses base 2. You see, when I go to that laptop in a minute, when I go to that desk and I start clicking buttons, everything I click is changed to a base 2. The computer does all the stuff in base 2, then changes it back to base 10 for me. So when you pick up your calculator and you start punching in 4 times 8, it's not doing what you think of as 4 in base 10 times 8 in base 10. It changes the 4 in base 10 to a base 2 number. It changes the 8 in base 10 to a base 2 number. It works it in base 2 and gives you the answer back in base 2. So without base 2, you would have nothing that you're used to having. Because what happens is, several things in the real world have 2 possibilities. On what? Off. That's base 2. So if I've got something electronic, it can be charged and not charged. It can have a pulse and not have a pulse. The breaker can be on and it can be off. Circuits can be open and they can be closed. So with machines, that's what happens. So you think that you're operating in base 10 all the time, but you're not. There are lots of other bases that you're operating in, they're just hidden from. Now we've got to go the other way. I want you to take your blocks and I want you to make me this number. I want you to make me a 9 using your base 5 blocks. So we're going the other way. Instead of giving you another base and changing to base 10, you've got to be able to change from base 10 to another base. So how in the world are you going to make a 9 using your base 5 blocks? Now, what's the biggest base value that you're allowed to have? Remind me. What's the biggest base value that you're allowed to have in base 5? 4. That means you can't have more than 4 of something. So I can't take and put down 9 of these. Because the most I can have of something is what? 4. So how am I going to make a 9 using these base 5 blocks? What am I going to need to do?
A rod and 4 1.
All right, if I do a rod, and then I do 4 of these 1s. How am I going to write that number down?
1 and 4, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have a 1, 4. Now, why? Because that's 1, 5, 1 rod, and 4 1s. So a 9 in base 10 is the same thing as a 1, 4 in base 5. All right, do this one for me. Versus this one. How would I make a 23 in base 5? And then how would I make a 26 in base 5? So make the 25 first and then make the 26. Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote it down wrong. This is a 23 in base 10 and a 26 in base 10. I want you to change them to base 5. So fix that in your notes. Now, if I try to make a 23, can I use one of these to make a 23? Why not? It's too what? It's too big, because this is a 20 what? 25. So instead of using a flat, what am I going to have to use? I'm going to have to use what? My rods? How many rods am I going to need? 4. Does everybody understand why I'm going to need 4 rods? That's a 5. Here's another 5. Here's another 5. Here's another 5. How many have I used up already? That's 4. How many is that already? 20. I need 20 what? 3. So what do I need now? 3 little ones. So how am I going to write 23? I'm going to write 4 rods and what? 3 ones. So I'm going to put it as a what? 4 what? 3 in base 5. Now, how am I going to do the 26? Do I need 5 of it? Can I put 5 of these rods down? Why? What's the most I can put down? 4. Do I need one of these? Yeah, I need one of these. How much is that already? 25. What do I need now? 1 more, right? Do I need a rod? I don't need a rod, do I? I just need a what? Doesn't that make me 26? So how am I going to write that? 1 what? 0, 1. 1 flat what? No rods and what? 1, 1. All right, do 1 more, then we're going to kind of generalize. What if I told you to make a 72 in base 10? And change it to base 5. Do I need any of these flats? I do, right? Do I need this big flippy fold out thing? Do I need this? Why? It's too big, right? How many of these flats did you want me to use? 2. All right. If I use 2 flats, that's 2 25s, right? So how much have you already used up? 50. How much do you have left to worry about? I need 72 and I've already got 50, right? So how much is left for me to try to figure out? 22. So what do I need now? I need a bunch of these, don't I? How many of these rods did you decide you needed? 4. Well, now I've used up 50, what? 55, what? 60, 65, what? 70. And now I need 2 more. How do I get 2 more? So how do I write that number? 2 what? 4 what? 2 in base 5. Are we okay? Now, here's what I want you to realize that you did. How did you decide which picture to start with? Why did you start with rods on this one but flats on these? Does that make sense? Why did you grab the flats for this one? Because it was what? It's too big, wasn't it? Now, what if I told you that you had to do 200 in base 10? Now, would you grab that big long flippy fold out thing? So do you understand that you're grabbing the biggest picture first? And then seeing how much is left over. So without the blocks, to me, this is the easiest way of doing it. If I'm doing the 72, I'm going to start drawing place values. Now, if I'm going to base 5, this is my 5 to the 0 column, correct? So that's my ones. This would be my 5 to the what? 1. So that would be my 5s. Everybody with me? What would my 5 to the second column be? That's my 25s. Now, do you understand that if I did 5 to the third, that would be my what? Do you see, if I'm trying to do a 72 or any of these, am I going to have any 125s in these numbers? No. So do you understand when you draw the place value blanks, it's like the Price is Right. You need the closest one without going over. Is everybody with me? I don't need this one. It's too, what did you tell me a minute ago? It was too what? It was too big. But if I'm doing 200, I would need it, right? So you're going to draw place values until you go over. And then you need to erase the one that goes over. So do you understand that your answer is going to have 3 digits? And you told me that you grabbed the biggest one first. So now let me ask you this. You have 72. Aren't you taking out 25s until you can't take out 25s anymore? Now, could you take out more than 125? You did, didn't you? Now, do you realize that repeated subtraction is the same thing as division? You decided how many 25s you could pull out of what? 72. How many can you pull out? You can pull out what? 2. So you're going to divide your given number by the largest place value. And that number goes in that blank. I need 2 of those 25s. Now, when you did that, didn't you take out 50, like you told me a second ago? And how many did that leave you to work with? You told me you had to work with how many? 22. Now, what are you going to do next? Aren't you going to go to rods? Don't you need to see how many 5s you can pull out of what? 22. So you're going to divide the remainder by the next place value. So I've got 22 by next place value. How many 5s can you pull out of 22? 4. Now when you do that, haven't you taken up or used up 20? So how many is that going to leave you to worry about? 2. And that's what I keep doing. I keep taking the remainder and dividing by the next what? Place value. How many 1s can I pull out of 2? 2. So my answer was 2, 4, 2 in what base? 5. Let me do one that's not in base 5. Okay? What if I told you this? Change 61 to base 3. Now, if I'm going to base 3, what are the only digits I'm allowed to use? What are the only base values I can use? 0, 1, and what? 2. So you can't put down a 4 or a 7. Is everybody with me? Now look what I said. Draw place value blanks. What's this first one going to be? My 3 to what column? What do you always start with?
0.
What's that really mean? 1. What would my next column be? 3 to the 1. What would that really be? My 3s. Then I would have 3 to the second. What's that really? That's my 9s. I have 3 to the third. Now, what's 3 to the third? Well, 3 times 3 is 9. What's 9 times 3? 27. All right. 3 to the fourth would be, well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. And 27 times 3 is 81. Do I need an 81s? Why? It's too big. Remember, it's the closest one without going what? Over. So this time, my answer is not going to have 3 digits. It's going to have what? 4 digits. Now look what it says. Divide your given number by the largest place value. My number is a 61. How many 27s can you pull out of 61? How many times can you subtract 27 out of 61 even? 2. What's that going to get me? 54? Is that right? So that 2 goes in that place. Is everybody with me? Now, I've used up 54, which leaves me how many to work with? 7. Now look what it says. Divide the remainder by the next what? Place value. How many 9s can you pull out of 7? Now, it's not big divided by small. Is everybody with me? It's you're dividing the remainder by the place value. Would you tell me how many 9s can I pull out of 7? None. So I've still got 7 to work with. So now I take that remainder. How many 3s can I pull out of 7? 2. Won't that be 6 that I've used up now? What am I left with? 1. And that remainder gets divided by the next place value. How many 1s can I pull out of 1? 1. So my answer ends up being 2021 in base 3. Make sure you write the base, because if the base is missing, they think you mean base 10. Is everybody with me? So do these steps make sense? Now, part of your homework is going to be doing that. You have a worksheet where you're going from base 10 to other bases and other bases back to what? Base 10. Now, we're going to play with them some more next time because the people on Zoom didn't have a chance to do it in front of me. Is everybody with me? So you're going to do those base 5 blocks again on Thursday when we're doing Zoom. Okay? So homework's going to be on Moodle. Come see me if you need some help. Okay. And next time we'll talk about when your first test is. We'll kind of use a guesstimate when that might